Hello, everybody. Welcome to NKO Book Club, episode 2. We are reading, hold on, I have my pen about to fly out here. We are reading The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. We are going through chapters 2 through 4 today. And damn, y'all, the way that this has been like highlighted and dog-eared and everything is just absolutely unbelievable. So, oh, hold on. Wait, what did I do? I hit something. So go ahead. If you are here right now, say hello. Let's open up the chat because this is what it is. It's book club, right? So we can talk openly. I want to hear about what you guys are going through, what struck you, and we will get into it in a second. So go ahead, say hello. And a quick heads up too, if you guys are not following the NKO Club Instagram, which is at NKO Club, or are signed up for the newsletter, please go to nkoclub.com and sign up for my newsletter and follow at NKO Club on Instagram. Okay, let me try to. I'm getting the hang of this, guys. Like, I feel like I'm getting the hang of it. Hi, hello. Hi, Hummus Pizza. Hi, Bethany. Hi, Danelle. Hi, Katie. Hi, Erica. Hi, Daphne. Hi, Kayla. Oh, this is so awesome, you guys. Hello, 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 hello. How are we doing? We good? I know it's Wednesday. I have to say I'm very, very, very happy because it was a beautifully warm-ish day in DC. So I walked around with just a sweatshirt. And is that not the most satisfying thing after a cold winter? I don't know. Maybe. I think we're still in the winter, but we're gonna do what we can. Thank you. This is a little polo rugby from the men's section. One of the cutest parts, honestly. It's got this little like pinstripe underneath the collar. Very, very cute. Oh, we got workouts in and got dinner. I love that. I got my workout in this morning. I feel you, a little different for me. It was not the most productive, but you know what? We got it done. I said, let them schedule me with a crazy day because a lot's going on, but let me go ahead and find my time to move my body. Ooh, 75 degrees in SC. Is that South Carolina? Gosh, I can't wait for 75 degrees. But yes, Danelle said it felt like spring. It was 50 degrees here too. I will take 50 degrees at this point, and this is coming from a Californian, a Southern Californian, mind you. So we're getting there. I feel like this is a tease. Like I know there's a couple more cold weather days coming, but I feel like we're shifting. We're turning the corner towards spring, which is always a good feeling. So with that, I think this is actually a great time to be reading this book, The Let Them Theory, and the reason why is there's nothing quite like opening up the year and dealing with the difficulties of cold weather and the end of the holiday season and bills. And now we're getting into tax season, which I heard somebody at the grocery store talking about it today. And I was like, oh gosh, shoot, we got to get on top of that. So this can be a very stressful time of year for a lot of us. It's kind of no man's land. It's before the weather turns. It's difficult. And especially there's a lot of pressure with the new year and keeping up and setting goals. So the let them theory can be very, very helpful. So where we left off last book club is we were talking generally just about what Mel introduces at the beginning. So the concept of let them, which is kind of this energy of stoicism meets like radical acceptance and allowing space and distance from what's occurring or what is occurring to you in your life. And then what's very, very important and what she shares is then she leans into this concept of let me. So first it's let them accept what is, allow people to show up in the way that they are. And then we get to a place of let me. So we're going to get a little bit deeper into that. Hi, Erica. Hi, Hannah. Hi, Jennifer. I love seeing y'all join. This is so awesome. So a little reminder, if you're just joining now, make sure you are signed up for NKO Club for the newsletter and make sure you are following us on Instagram. We have lots of fun stuff coming. Lots of fun stuff coming. Had a very epic meeting today. Very excited. So yeah, so let's get into let them versus let me. I want you guys to share something that I think is really fascinating. And when I first heard the concept for the book, I've been to a lot of therapy. Let's just call it what it is. I've had anxiety and depression my whole life, but I was diagnosed with depression when I was in my senior year of college. But I knew that I had OCD, and that was kind of the opening like wink and a nod to what was to come later for me in my life and in my mental health journey. And that occurred when I was 11. So I've spent a lot of time in and out of therapist's office, learning different tips, tricks, and tools. And I'm very grateful for that. However, what's fun is particularly when you have a bunch of really awesome, interested, emotionally mature friends who also have been to therapy because they've gone through things like grief and the passing of a parent and whatnot. You tend to kind of swap notes about what your therapist told you, and then you share with me, and then I share what my therapist told me and share it with you. It's kind of awesome. So there's definite perks to going to therapy is that you then have group therapy after with your friends where inadvertently all of your therapists are somewhat talking through you. It's kind of awesome. So this concept, and the first time I heard about radical acceptance was from my friend Kate. And Kate, not to tell her story, but she had gone through the passing of her mother and very difficult. And she knew that she was ill. And this was something that was very drawn out through her childhood, teen years, and then culminating in her young adulthood. And so she had been in therapy and been traveling that path for a long time. And I always have admired her perspective of how she has this radical acceptance. So she has this ability to really allow people to show up as they are. And she is the epicenter of so many great friendships and relationships because of it. So I first want to ask you guys, how do you define radical acceptance? How do you define stoicism, which is that's more focused on how you control your own inner thoughts. But what does radical acceptance mean to you? And how do you think that could show up in your life at this point? I don't want to give you guys a second to respond in the chat. I want to drink from my Stanley. I will say I wish there was little icons to see when people were typing because I know people are, but I can't see my type bubbles. Okay, Hummus Pizza says, so radical acceptance for you means welcoming change. It's an interesting word that you're saying is welcoming. Why welcoming? Because I think for a lot of people, they would say the word accepting change. But I like that you use the word welcoming. That has such a positive connotation to it. It has such like a greeting to a shift in your life. Exactly. Okay, so that's the energy that you bring into it. I love that. Erica says, I think it means accepting who I am now while being open to future growth too. Ooh, I love that. Inviting into your living room, giving it a cup of coffee, change. I love that. I'm really thinking about what you said, Erica, about accepting who you are now and being open to future growth too. And I think with radical acceptance also comes this ability of grace. And that's interesting because that's something that's really given when you have the let them theory in play. So this really cool graphic I'm going to pull up that's in the book. And I'm a visual girly. I love to see images. Hold on, here it is. Okay, so in the book, if you guys have the book, there's there we go. There is this like teeter totter, right? The seesaw. And it's without let them, and then it's with let them. So you'll notice that without let them, you're put down by the opinions of others. You're put down by the idea that, and by giving your power away, by trying to control the actions, the words, just the being of others, which truly this construct, this need of control comes from a place of fear. And I think I can definitely speak for myself on this front. I think a lot of us think if we can control the outcome, if we can set an expectation and see that expectation through to fruition, we're safe. We're good. Because I had the concept that this would happen and it did. However, we're all adults here. We know life rarely works that way. Yet we spend so much time trying to manage and control and manipulate the lives or the experiences of others, or even sometimes the words or the energy of others. And that inherently shoots away all our power. We're putting our energy into others and allowing how they show up in the world to determine our peace and our sanctity. So what's really cool is in this graphic, it says, without let them, the person who is you or I, who is not using the let them theory, they feel inferior. You can feel jealous of other people. You can feel very insecure. That's a big one, or left out, or isolated, or less than. When you allow other people's being, other people's way of the world to control your self worth because you're trying to manipulate it, you're trying to control the outcome, you really are just giving away all of your power. You're saying the way with which you see the world and go through the world is more important than the way which I do. And that's not very empowering. That's minimizing. Here we go. This is a great note. I've tried so hard to convince myself I would be safe if I could control the world because I had the best intentions. And I was not allowing others to hold their line and overstepping mine. Ooh. See, now you're bringing up something really great with this. What's fascinating is that I think a lot of us who have this challenge and try to control, it's always coming often from good intentions. I know a lot of wonderful people, and I'm going to give myself some grace here too, because I do this. I want to control the outcome. I want to mitigate any risk. I want to make everything great for everybody around me. But the problem with that is that I'm allowing my intention to be a controlling force, right? And then inherently, you then inflict your perspective and your viewpoint on other people. And that's not loving. I think true love, true community, true relationships come from us giving people the space to understand and to show up as themselves. Yeah, I'm a lot of yeses to that. I love that. Yes, I think it's always coming from a good place, and I think we have to give ourselves grace when we recognize, oh, I'm overstepping, or I'm really trying to control, or letting the energy or the way other people are showing up to affect me, which inherently puts you down. This is a great quote that I actually highlighted that Mel said. She said, "Anytime you internalize other people's thoughts, actions, and feelings as evidence that somehow you're a bad person or you've done something wrong, you give those other people power. You inherently pull yourself down on that scale and you become less than." Now, what's interesting about let them, that I really liked this, was that by saying let them, you're then using detachment theory. You're using more of a radical acceptance. So when you say, okay, let's say, your boss is being really micromanaging and overwhelming and over your shoulder, and you're feeling really hunted and very targeted. Okay, let them. Let them. They're in a state, they might be going through stuff at home. We don't know. But let them show up as they are. And what that gives you is a sense of detachment. It also kind of puts you above on the scale because there's a sense of superiority because you're choosing not to allow their energy to affect your field. Like if you're in a contained bubble, that person beyond that, when you say let them, they can throw a stone, they can throw paint, they can throw a tomato. It's not going to hit you. You've got like a shield around you when you say let them, which is this kind of an action of control because you're distancing yourself from the energy and experience of the other people that you were once trying to control. Right? What do you guys think about that? Have you found from reading this that you're starting to be able to separate, or at least start to pause, start to take a little bit of space from those life stressors, from those emotional stressors, because you now have a tool when that comes up? You're like, let them. I want to hear how that's going for you guys. Let's see. Hannah says, trusting in your ability to handle whatever comes next. That belief ultimately brings you peace and acceptance to what is, what will be. Yes, that radical acceptance is key. There's that great quote that says, a bird does not worry about if the branch is going to break. It knows that it has its own wings and can fly. And it's that self-confidence that comes with acceptance and byproduct of acceptance. Nikki, I love that. Thank goodness there have been so many life-saving moments of breath to be able to pause and reach your higher self, even if I'm triggered. Ooh, I love that concept of higher self. So I think for a lot of us, we all have personal aspirations. I know there's a lot of areas in my life that I'd like to improve my response. Most definitely, I can get very overwhelmed, whether it be, I think, pretty sure I have ADHD. I had a therapist say, you do want to be tested for it. And I was like, yeah, but I don't know if I want to be on medication for it at this point. But I definitely have a lot of those reactive. I get overwhelmed very and overstimulated very, very easily, especially in high stress situations. But that's often coming from the fact that I can't control those other situations. And being able to have that moment of let them, it just, it's like someone takes the air, like deflates the balloon a little bit. It's like the tension that was really high or the water level that was getting really high just kind of comes down a little bit and you can put your shoulders down. Danelle says, you think about it and you tend to be pretty reactive in general. So it's a process, but awareness is the first step. Yes. I think that's very important to know what you're bringing up too. Mel makes it very clear. And later on, she gets into the science behind the let them theory and behind what's happening in our brains. And so we can get into that in a second. But by no means anything, if we're trying to change our emotional reactions to things, it's a neural pathway, right? Your brain has to develop something through habit. And habit occurs through consistent action, consistent repetitive actions and experiences. So being able to first have the awareness is massive. A lot of people go through their life and never consider how they walk through the world or that they could improve in which the way they communicate or improve their self-worth and being and whatnot. That's a huge win. A lot of people will never even do that. So, yes, give yourself grace for that. The other point is being able to, maybe it's giving yourself a reminder. I know someone that would wear a wristband that would have words on it. Some people would write on their hand. I know Mel talks about, I'm not saying do this, but maybe do this if it's your thing. A lot of people have gotten tattoos that say let them, just as a reminder. Now, I don't think you need to go and ink it on your skin, but you can get a little Sharpie. You can write it in the morning or like little initials LM and put it in a space where you're going to see it. Maybe if you're at your office or if there's areas in your home or areas around you, maybe in your car, if you're stressed out while driving, put a sticky note in there that says, let them, right? Plant little seeds of reminder so that as we're building this new habit, we can be consistent with it. Yeah, that's what Erica said. You think it's exactly that. It's a tool. It's not something I think about constantly, but during certain situations, that tool exists. Caitlin, use it a lot with your mother-in-law. But I found myself saying, let her, and let me find something else that fills my cup. Ooh. And also, Caitlin, I think what's so special about that is that you're allowing your mother-in-law to show up in the world as she is, but that's inherently it's keeping peace in a way with the family and with your kids, because by all means, you are the mother, you have your boundaries, you have your rules. Those should always be respected when it comes to your family and your children. But some of her, I'm assuming probably comments or energy or maybe perspectives of things, by saying let them, you can keep peace not only for you, but for your kids and for your family dynamic. And I think that's such a level of emotional evolution and regulation that your kids might not recognize it now, but I think they'll really appreciate that, especially one day as they become maybe older, maybe they're teens, maybe they're in their adulthood, but being able to have the example for your kids of letting someone show up as they are, but still being firm in your boundaries when need to is very powerful. Oh, Bethany, you have an NKO tattoo. That is so awesome. I love how we all include ourselves and let them. Yes, absolutely. Danelle has no more real estate for tattoo. You know what? That's fine. So if you did get another one, no one would really know, which is awesome. I absolutely love that. That's absolutely great. All right, friends. So we have the let them. And then there's this part of the let me, right? And it creates a superiority. But what I really liked was she had the perspective of saying without let them, saying let them, and then the let me. Here's what I loved about let me. Let me evens the scales, right? So if you don't say let them and you just react, you give all your power away. If you say let me, you hold all your power and you're kind of maybe a little haughty. Now, Mel brings up a very interesting point and an important point. And I think we've all maybe been guilty of this too at certain times where we isolate because we're like, I'm not dealing with that. That's them. I'm not dealing with that. And we isolate ourselves, but it becomes a superiority complex. And it can come from a place of self-protectiveness. It can come from a place of wanting to mitigate the discomfort, but it can also ruin relationships. So there's a dark side to just saying let them. It is most definitely a two-pronged approach. You say let them and you allow them the grace and you allow you the space to then say let me. What choice, what action are you going to make? Are you going to diffuse the situation? Are you going to take a break from the situation and put it on the shelf for a second and then come back to it? Are you recognizing, oh, this is a chance for actually me to show up better? Maybe I could be a better friend. Maybe I could be a better sibling. Maybe I could be a better partner because I'm now recognizing and giving this person their space to emote, to be, to act as they are. And then I'm in control of how I respond. So there's like two beats there, right? Oh, it's a good, yep. You let them let me. Yep. Yeah, I don't know. Have you guys ever felt that isolation? I know in my more difficult mental health chapters, or especially when mental health is kind of on a downhill slope, I do tend to isolate. I isolate from my friends. I'm not as communicative. I start to kind of retreat from social activities more so. I tend to really spend a lot of time on like Netflix and disassociating. And a lot of it is that while I've isolated myself, I want to feel that superiority complex that I don't have to deal with it. But in doing so, it can become very lonely. Yeah. Okay. I'm saying a lot of yeses. Okay. So the self isolation is very real. Now, there's a couple reasons for that too, which we're going to get to next, talking about the science of what's going on in our brains. There's this doctor, Dr. Aditi, that she speaks about here, who discusses the difference between operating your brain operating from your prefrontal cortex versus your amygdala. And the amygdala is like the amygdala is your reptile brain. It's your baby brain. It's like the brain in a brain. And it is all just about stress response and keeping you alive. And it's the size of an almond. And the amygdala can be a little bit of a bitch because when our amygdala is activated and when we bypass our prefrontal cortex, right? Our prefrontal cortex is not being oxygenated. We're not getting oxygen and blood flow to our prefrontal cortex, which is why the deep breathing is so helpful because it actually pushes the blood flow there. The amygdala does always has access. So it's the emergency brake of your brain. And a lot of us, because of stress, because of external factors, because of rumination, diminished ability to focus, partly because of stress and not getting great sleep, the amygdala starts to be in the driver's seat rather than your prefrontal cortex. And that's what we always want to make sure we're keeping track of. But it's helpful to know there's actually something happening in your brain. Like it's like a muscle that's over flexing. It's no different than when you have a muscle imbalance. If you're overtraining one muscle, your other muscles start to strain and get sore because everything works as a team. But when one is doing more than what it should, the system falls out of balance. That graphic makes me visualize radical acceptance as a way of slowly accumulating merit to claim when there's a pragmatic thing to ask for, like asking a group for equity. Very interesting. That's a great point. Hannah, I do the same thing. You're an isolator. You space on text DMs when you're overwhelmed. Yes. Because a lot of us, look, we have text messages. Like I've already had, oh my God, I got another one. Like 8 messages since I've been on this live with you guys, and it's been 23 minutes, and emails, and I don't even have kids. Those of you guys that have kids, my God, like mommy and daddy are needed like constantly. I don't know how you guys do it. So being able to use this tool in multiple different situations helps you bring back that energy of your life, which I loved, right? Like sometimes it's like we're in this hamster wheel of just constant to-do list and pressures and stress responses that we're not even living. We're just reacting to whatever external factor comes in. And that means that we're a byproduct to our environment and the environment controls us. We don't control the environment. And that's not what we need to do. Yeah, sometimes the heaviness of maybe having to say let them very often feels like a burden. So the isolation is easier. I totally get that. I think when you go through transition periods in life too, like transitioning, I think for a lot of people, the first time they really experience it is from high school to college, and then from college to adulthood. And then in that adulthood period, from single, living in the city kind of energy to moving and going to the suburbs and having the family. And then it becomes when children leave the home. There's all these big transition periods in our life cycle. And I think when we can be overwhelmed by the emotion of it and having to let go of a lot or having to come to terms with things and maybe have a lot of let thems, it can be difficult to find where the energy for let me is. And I think in those times in particular, if you know that you're going through hefty life transition, whether it be from an internal relationship, career, family dynamics, just life plans, family, people passing, people giving birth, the whole life cycle. If you know you're in one of those periods where there's a lot of let them energy going on, the let me in that situation, maybe it is a little bit of isolation. Maybe it is saying, let me figure out what my needs are at this point in time. Let me treat myself really well so I have the energy to tolerate all of these let thems. We have to be mindful of that. I think particularly like there's a lot of I think a lot of us in this time period in our country, there's a lot of angst and vigor and vitriol and fear and concern and so much that we're being bombarded with, particularly on news outlets and social media, that we're using a lot of our let them energy right now. And we're really saying, okay, let them, still let them, okay. But the let me, sometimes that isolation can be a good thing within chunks. Yeah, that's exactly what Eric is saying. Little sense of isolation are a good thing, but when it becomes when we like feeling in that superior place rather than wanting to go to the let me energy, which is acceptance, which is providing that bit of understanding, which is that compassion and taking responsibility for yourself and your own actions and saying, "Hey, let them be emotional in the way that they are, but let me also acknowledge that I contributed to the situation and there's things that I can do better." That's transformative. Ooh, let me write my thoughts and feelings down so I don't take it out on other people. That's awesome. I think that's being able to journal or put things somewhere, letting them exist outside of your brain is very helpful because when you can see them in black and white, they don't feel as much of a tsunami. They're more of a puddle, to be honest. It's very helpful. Yeah, Jennifer, I said on text, DMs, etc. But I still think about all the people and things I need to respond to. It's usually when you have a busy schedule and don't give yourself time to take care of you. Yes. Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is not stupid. And that's where having those moments built into your lifestyle, into your routine are important. Maybe it's, my mom loved this. She would take a bath. Like that was my mom's thing. And my dad would not let us go in there. He's like, your mom's in the bath. Don't do it. Like he would guard the door so that she would be able to have her just isolation time. And sometimes she'd be in that bath. I don't even remember how long. It felt like forever. It was probably like 20 minutes because Lord knows I was a kid and I was impatient. But that was her time to settle. And we all have our different habits. And maybe it's not one longer stint like that. Maybe it's the 20-minute workout you did in the morning and the 5 minutes you take before everyone gets up and you do your little matcha or your coffee or you make like an iced latte and that's your you time. Hannah, my family knows that's my workout time. There you go, Hannah. Hannah knows her workout time. That is her time. Nobody bug mom. Let her do. Let her be. I love that. So what are thoughts though? I want to get into what Mel was discussing with Dr. Aditi because stress is unfortunately a very common killer and it adds to the compounding of other health issues. There's a lot more studies coming out about stress. Is not to be like fear mongering, but stress can do just as much as having, substances in your body that aren't great consistently or, eating non-nutrient dense foods in large amounts. Stress can be absolutely diabolical to the body, to cell function, to cell turnover, all of it. So, as we're discovering the pressures of stress, and as also our generation, our culture is inherently more stressed because we are expected to produce, create, operate at the level that all these wonderful tools like our computers and our smartphones and all of this incredible software and technology allows us to create more quickly. I think we're going to see this even escalate a bit more when it comes to AI. Now AI is a great tool. It's a great, again, you know, kind of like a booster pack onto what you're doing. But with AI, what we need to expect is that the output of human beings cannot be greater. However, it feels as if, and let me know if you guys feel this way too, it feels as if we're expected to do 10 times more than we were a decade ago. Anyone else feel that way? I see a lot of hearts. Yes, we are way too connected this day and age, and it feels like the stress to be everywhere and do everything. Yes, and that's later on in the book, Mel gets to comparison, and we'll most definitely talk about that. But yes, we see all of these snippets and highlight reels of other people's lives, and we think, I should be there. I should be doing this. I should. But what do we find? I had this kind of realization, and it comes from the word should. And I remember talking about this in therapy a long time ago, and it always kind of circles back. But should means that there is an inherent expectation. And if we have an expectation, what kind of energy are we in? We're not in let them energy. We're in I need to control so I don't have fear. So whenever we place should in any area of our life, we are trying to protect ourselves from a negative outcome versus allowing, saying whatever will be, que sera, sera. Knowing that you can trust yourself with regardless of the outcome, you'll be able to manage. You let that outcome be that outcome. You let those people be those people. And then you say, let me deal, let me respond as needed. And it's funny how a lot of this energy comes from us using the word should and setting expectations for how other people in the world, we believe how other people in the world should show up. Do you guys feel pressure with that? Like, what's something that you often say should to? Maybe it's to, I don't know, I did this today. I was literally coming from Wegmans. Drivers were cutting me off 6 ways to Sunday, swerving into lanes, texting. And I said, oh gosh, they should just put their phones down. They should just know they're going to get somebody in an accident, in a wreck. And I was allowing my state of mind and my energy and being to be agitated because somebody wasn't driving how they should. Should is a good marker, and I think a good note if we're trying to acknowledge if we're in the let them energy versus not. If we're saying should, we need to start the follow-up to that to be like, oop, I need to integrate some of the let them energy. Hummus pizza, I feel like a light bulb just went off in my head. Oh, good. Yes, scarcity mindset versus growth mindset. I don't really realize how activated I get with the word should. Yeah, isn't that funny? Like, take a second, like sit. If you're in a private place, great. If you're not, do it anyway if you feel it. And close your eyes and just say the word should. Like, see how that feels in your body. Should. I have a certain feeling. I want to hear, how do you guys feel physically when you close your eyes and you say the word should? Okay, Nikki says empty. Caitlin says unsettled. Danelle says guilty. Jennifer, you're using should a lot mentally. You're saying the word should. Guilt, more guilt. And guilt stems from feeling shame. Activated a little jolt of adrenaline. Yep. And it's really funny. Like, words have such power. Hannah says anxious. Katie, like, you feel kind of frantic, like you needed to do something and you're like, oh, where is it? Yes. For me, when I say the word should and I just sit with it, I feel like something's sitting on my chest and the air kind of goes out of my lungs. I feel overwhelmed and I feel um pressed. I feel pressed down. I feel kind of squashed. Yeah. This is what's fascinating. How we think, the words that we use create all these little signals in our brain. And when we start piling on the words should or in past tense, like could have, should have, we really limit the potential outcome for what will be and for our brain to be able to think creatively about it. So, speaking on that point, back to what Dr. DT said. So, you have your prefrontal cortex, right? Which is all the executive functioning. It helps you make decisions, pro and con lists, help you decide. Let's say you have a really hefty, let's say you have a job offer and you have to move, helping figure out how to source through that in a non emotional, logical, thoughtful sense. We always want to be operating heavy machinery and heavy life choices from our prefrontal cortex. Now, when we get stressed, when we have less oxygen, oftentimes when we get stressed, our breathing gets really shallow and we breathe up here and not down in our belly. We're not getting all of the oxygen. We're only getting a little bit. It's kind of like, when you have, y'all will know this. You have hair in the shower and when the drain starts clogging and then everything kind of puddles up, but nothing's draining down. That's what happens in your brain when the amygdala is there. Like you want water going straight down the drain. You don't want like the little puddle in the shower floor. When we are stressed and in a state of fight or flight, we then, instead of having the brain come all the way, having the blood come all the way to our prefrontal cortex, it stops at the amygdala. And the amygdala gets all the blood. It's the size of literally an almond, is a little almond, and that almond is like literally it is the part of your brain that thinks everything's going to attack you. It's a part of your brain that says, should have, it didn't work. Oh my God, what are we doing? If you've seen Inside Out 2, which is a fantastic film, and I love Pixar, I will cry. The anxiety character, she is straight amygdala. Like anxiety, amygdala. Just put those two together. It's the A's. When we're operating from our amygdala, our scope of understanding, of opportunity, of creativity shuts down. You cannot think creatively from a space of fight or flight. You can react, but you cannot respond. And the goal here, right, with Let Them is to be able to allow ourselves to respond. Response takes a pause and takes consideration before we get into the let me. So, what's important is that we start building these habits, and it's going to take time, right? Mel mentions this a lot. She's like, you're going to be saying let them all the time. You're going to keep having to say let them, and then it's not going to feel right. So you're going to have to say let them. You're going to have to like convince yourself for a while. Fake it till you become it. I'm telling you it works. Because you're literally building a new neural pathway in your brain. You are forging a new trench. So as we start to try to get back into our prefrontal cortex and not operate so much from our amygdala, we have to use language to help us too. So just a point before we meet next week, consider when you start to say the word should. Consider when other people say the word should. Because usually if they're telling you should, you're going to feel attacked and isolated and stressed inherently, just because how you feel, how your body responds to the word, but more importantly, because that person is expressing an expectation and they're not letting you be you. They're trying to control. Sit with that one for a second. Yeah. So, Nikki, you brought up something interesting. I love the use of language as a positive force for healing instead of the other way around. I actually learned this in my first ever psychology class that I took at USC. And it was a class called The Science of Happiness. And it was such an awesome class. And I think inherently I knew something was going on in my own brain, which is why I was like really drawn to this particular class, trying to figure myself out subconsciously. But I learned that the brain actually and your mood can be shifted more easily through external stimuli. So that's why taking control of the reins, like when we were in class and I would do those 2 inhales, the physiological sigh and the 1 long exhale, You then that's the hard reset. That is the shift button to go from your amygdala back to your prefrontal cortex. You can do external things and you can speak external words that then help shift back. So it's not just I should be able to turn my brain over because I need to practice this, which now we're putting expectations. It's more finding those other tools. Language, breathing in particular is probably the easiest because it's a physical activity. Movement, that puts us back into the prefrontal cortex, which is where we want to spend most of our time, because that's when we feel like ourselves. We're not reactive, we're responsive, we're creative, we're able to think fun thoughts and say, hey, you know what? How about we do a trip for the weekend and we'll go to the museum, or let's do this special thing. Oh, have you ever thought about doing X, Y, and Z? When we are overloaded and in our amygdala, all we're doing is surviving. We're not living, we're just surviving, which is okay. That's why we have one. We need to have that at times. But oftentimes, being overstimulated, we force ourselves into that state because of what we allow to have our attention and where we give away our power. A la why let them is the step to shifting back into your prefrontal cortex. Hummus pizza. I'm so flattered that people want to control me. I know, right? And I think a lot of people want to control, again, like what we said, it's not from a nefarious perspective all the time. For some people, it is. For most people, it's that they're trying to help themselves feel safe. And when you consider it that way, you can give people more grace for how their emotional responses are. It's a form of self soothing as an adult. They're just trying to control the world around them so they feel less on edge. Doesn't make it right, but that's their journey to walk. You have to let them figure that out, but you can let you distance and have some space and say, oh, I see what they're going through. Okay. I can then be a little kinder. Or, you know what? I can realize they're in really a state that's going to start to affect me. So I'm going to take a break for a second, or I'm just going to go for a walk around the corner, or I'm going to just go somewhere else. You're in cardiac rehab right now, and I teach that breath pattern to your patients. I love that. Okay, so actually, guys, I think this is where we should end for today. We talked about the science that was shared with us in chapter 2. We're just starting to touch on stress and managing that. Next week, we're really going to get into other people's opinions. And I think this is going to be a really lovely, heftier conversation. Other people's opinions, other people's emotional reactions can have a large amount of control on us. So for now, what we're learning as we're diving in is let them gives you a sense of superiority. It gives you that sense of distance. We don't want to say let them too much. We don't want to only say let them, because that can become a form of self-isolation. We say let me to pull us back down to even the scales and to give compassion, to give understanding, to provide perspective, to take responsibility. And we want to live in that let them, let me state. And then what we're recognizing is that a lot of this can come from stress. And so knowing that stress compounds when we're not in that let them state and we're not going back to the let me state, we can do different things like breathing or just continually chanting, let them. Thought creeps in, but they're like this and they did this to me and they took away this. Let them, but let them. And really having that self-internal conversation is helpful. So let's close out physiological sigh. We did it to open my fitness classes and to get to a point of recovery, to get our heart rates down. Let's do this together and we can close this out for the evening. You guys have been so awesome. I love how supportive you are of each other. Yeah, this is definitely like a heavier, more self-help focused book for this book club, but I think we have a lot of opportunities later on. Week, maybe, I don't know if I could talk about Onyx Flame with a straight face. I think I'd just be red the whole time, but maybe, who knows? We'll see what happens in the future, but I so appreciate you guys being here. Let's go ahead before we close out. Send love to everybody in the comments. Please make sure you are liking this, you are subscribing. You guys are the day ones. Like, you are the literal first people. You are the first voices on YouTube. You have no idea how much this means to me. And this is only the beginning. So thank you for that. We have really fun stuff coming out with NKO Club. I'm not going to give you a date yet because we have to figure out fulfillment, but there's something really cool coming. It's great to see you all. And so let's close out before we go. Feet flat on the floor, roll the shoulders up, down, and back. Oh gosh, this makes me miss teaching so much. Not too much longer, you guys. Not too much longer. Oh, okay. Exhale first. Take a big, deep inhale, spine nice and long, all the way from the toes to the top of the head. Second additional inhale, all the lungs expand. Hold, slow exhale out audibly. So good. Use that 2 inhales, 1 long exhale. Use that let them chanting when things work itself up, and understand that let me is always the best option, and it can help get you back to center. We're going from the prefrontal cortex back, from the amygdala back to the prefrontal cortex. We're giving ourselves grace as we're learning these new pathways, these new neural pathways, these new habits. And next week, let's talk about external things that weigh really heavy, like other people's emotions and other people's opinions. So I will see you guys for next week. Thank you guys so much for joining. It was so special to have you guys here this evening. And I will see you guys, I believe, next Wednesday. I will be putting it in the newsletter. So make sure you're a part of the newsletter so you know. All right. Bye, friends. Have a great one. Stay never knocked out.